Hi, this is Emerald and welcome to the Diamond Net, and today I'm going to be sharing with you a simple shadow work technique for beginners. Alright, so in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you a simple shadow work technique for beginners, or really for anybody who wants to enhance their shadow work practice. And just to give you an idea of what shadow work is it's basically a process of making what's unconscious to you and what's been repressed conscious again, and reintegrating those parts of yourself back into your conscious personality. So the shadow is basically the blind spot of the psyche where we fragment off parts of our personality and we put them in the shadow to forget about them. We go unconscious to them, and shadow work is any process that is designed to get back in touch with those repressed parts and to make the unconscious conscious again. Now, before we get into the technique that I'm going to be sharing with you, one of the things that I wanted to mention is that when you ask yourself questions within your shadow work process, this is what helps you look into areas of your own inner world that you may not necessarily be looking at. And so even just asking yourself the right question, or asking yourself a question that kind of stumps you and makes you go, why is it that I do that? Or like, what is it about this thing that bothers me? Or what is it about this judgment that's coming up? Or why am I engaging in this behavior over here? Asking these types of questions really helps you reveal yourself to yourself. So when it comes to the process of making the unconscious conscious, sometimes you have to dig down really, really deep, and you have to face with all kinds of uncomfortable feelings or, things like that. But other times it's sort of just like learning to ask yourself the right questions to shine the light where you don't typically shine it. And you also want to keep in mind that all of your answers can be found within yourself. They're not something that you're going to find by reading books about shadow work or watching videos about shadow work, even this one. Really, you're going to be able to find those answers within yourself by asking yourself the right questions and engaging in the shadow work process for yourself. And one thing that's really important to note about shadow work is that all of the answers are within yourself. And so really asking yourself the right questions and going through this process is really about discovering something that you might already know deep down, but maybe haven't put words to yet, or haven't quite crystallized within your awareness. So without further ado, let me go ahead and share with you this shadow work technique. And this shadow work technique is called laddering. And what laddering is asking yourself why, and then answering that and asking why again, and answering that and asking why again. So it's basically the thing that every 5-year-old does, where it's like, well, why? And the reason it's called laddering is because it keeps bringing you down a layer deeper every single time you ask why until you get to the root. So if you happen to notice within yourself a top level symptom of the shadow, some kind of unwanted pattern of some sort, then you can start using this laddering technique to understand where it's coming from. For example, let's say that I have social anxiety, and I ask myself, well, why do I have social anxiety? Well, I might find in asking that question, it's like, well, when I'm around other people, I have this fear that I'm going to start getting into conflicts with people, or that people are going to hate me. And then I want to ladder a little bit deeper. I want to ask, why am I afraid of getting into conflicts with people? And maybe that leads me to the conclusion that I feel like others have some kind of authority over me that I don't have. Like, I perceive them as being up here and me down here. And then I ask myself, why do I perceive others as having authority over me? And why do I see them as up here and me down here? Well, maybe I come up with the conclusion that maybe it's because I have this deep belief that there's something wrong with me. And then I can go a layer deeper and ask myself, why do I believe that there's something wrong with me? And maybe at that point it brings me back to a memory from childhood where every little mistake that I was making was pointed out. Or maybe there's like some kind of specific memory that I have of, oh, I did something that was a little bit wrong and I got really yelled at for it. Or there was this big conflict that ensued. And at that point, I know that I've hit the root memory, or sometimes it's like a root feeling state where if I keep asking why, it just keeps bringing me back to the same situation again or the same feeling state. So, for example, if I come to that conclusion that the reason why I feel others have authority over me is because there's something wrong, I feel like there's something wrong with me, then I want to ask, okay, why do I feel like there's something wrong with me? And then it's like, oh, well, I have this feeling of shame. And it's like, okay, well, why do I have this feeling of shame? Well, it's because I feel shame. And it basically kind of loops back around onto itself where you can't go any deeper. And that's when you know you've hit to the root or close to the root. Now, there are also other types of laddering that I like to do as well. I like to continually ask, what was so bad about that? Or what would be so bad about that? For example, let's say that I have a tendency to repress my anger and maybe to not even be able to feel my anger very much because I automatically just rationalize my way out of it. And so I want to ask myself, well, what would be so bad about expressing anger? And maybe I come to the conclusion that, oh no, I'll be like my cousin who was always angry and I never wanted to be like that cousin. And then I can ask myself, well, what would be so bad about being like that cousin? And maybe that brings me to the answer that this cousin was always kind of looked at as the black sheep of their family, and I never wanted to be treated that way. And then I asked myself, well, what would be so bad about being treated like the black sheep of the family? And then maybe I would come to the conclusion that I would feel disconnected and I would feel like I didn't fit in. And then what would be so bad about feeling disconnected and not fitting in? Well, at this point, I've hit a loop, because what would be so bad about that is that I would feel disconnected and I wouldn't fit in. And then what would be so bad about that? I would feel disconnected and I wouldn't fit in. So again, you notice how once you get to a certain answer, it just loops back into that same answer. That's when you know that you've hit the root of your laddering questioning process. And to share another version of laddering, you can also use the question, what would that mean about me? So let's say that I want to speak in front of people. I want to be a public speaker, but I feel very scared and nervous to do it. And so there are all these different barriers that I have to speaking in front of people. And so to use this particular type of laddering, I want to see, first, what is it that I'm afraid of? So maybe I'm afraid of a bunch of people seeing me and maybe making a mistake in front of the crowd. And so then I can ask the question, okay, if I made a mistake public speaking in front of a crowd, what would that mean about me? Well, maybe I make the meaning that it means that, oh, if I can't do it, or if I make mistakes, then I shouldn't be doing it because I have to be perfect. And if I'm not perfect, then that means that I'm always going to fail. And so then I come to the answer of I would always fail. If I always failed, what would that mean about me? And maybe I have a tendency to make the meaning that if I always fail, that it is some kind of indicator of my inherent worth as a person. And so me always failing would mean to me that my worth as a person is invalid. And so if my worth as a person were invalid, what would that mean about me? It's well, it would mean that nobody would want to be around me and that I'm kind of this stranger in a strange land where I don't belong here. And if I didn't belong here, what would that mean about me? Well, it would mean that I'm kind of an intruder to the universe, like the universe abhors me. And it would mean that it is my nature to be a mistake of some kind. So those are a few different laddering techniques, and you can even mix them up. So you have the why, you have what would be so bad about that, or why would that be so bad? And then you have what would that mean about me? And you can basically trade them in and out for each question. So let's say that I have, let's go back to the social anxiety example. So let's say I have social anxiety. And so then I would go, why do I have social anxiety? It's well, I feel like maybe it's the case that people are going to, let's say, be unkind to me when I interact with them. And then I can go, well, what's so bad about that? Why would that be so bad if people were unkind to me if I'm interacting with them? And maybe I come up with the answer that I don't know how to defend myself in that situation. And it's okay, well, if I don't know how to defend myself in that situation, what does that mean about me? And maybe I come to the conclusion that that means that I'm weak. And well, what would be so bad about that? If I were weak, what would be so bad about being weak? Well, maybe it means that I won't fit in with this particular crowd, which is very tough. And then I might ask myself, well, why do I want to fit in with that particular crowd? And maybe I come to the conclusion that I feel like that's the only crowd that's on offer to me. And if that's the only crowd that's on offer to me and I can't fit into it, well, what would be so bad about that? And then I come to the conclusion that I would be isolated. And what would be so bad about being isolated? Well, I would be isolated. And what would be so bad about being isolated? I would be isolated. So again, at that point, I know that I've hit the loop. So what I recommend is to find some kind of pattern that you notice yourself engaging in that's unwanted. And it can be an emotional pattern, it could be a behavioral pattern, it could be some kind of internal pattern negative self-talk. And then you can start asking yourself these laddering questions to really understand the roots of why those sort of surface level symptoms are there. So whether it's people pleasing or social anxiety or social avoidance, or let's say, like I said, negative self-talk, like being really unkind to yourself, or maybe it's the case that you tend to freeze up when you're taking tests. So it could be a variety of different things, but whatever it happens to be, you can use these laddering questions to understand the deeper underlying reasons why those patterns are there in the first place. Anyway, so that's all I have for you for now. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and subscribe, click the like button below, and leave me a comment. Also, I have a shadow work group coaching program. It's for people who have big goals and dreams, who want to use shadow work to identify and resolve the patterns that block them from reaching those goals and achieving those dreams. And so if that sounds like something that you're interested in, go ahead and click the link down below in the description box to schedule a free discovery call with me. And also, if you would like to learn more about shadow work, go ahead and click this video right here and keep becoming more you.